On March 2nd, 2016, Lars Ulrich was hosting a symposium in Berkeley at Zellerbach Hall where they were going to be discussing the creative process and the Bay Area. And some of the people were Les Claypool, Peter Coyote, James Hetfield, and Lars's father, Torben Ulrich. I recorded this and I didn't get the whole thing. It is over an hour, but I just stopped recording. You can see who else is there. Boring for me. Some of the people I've never heard of, but mainly I went for Lars and James and Les Claypool, who was a riot, by the way. I've always loved Primus, but here's a little background about Lars. You can pause it and read it if you want. But let's see. Yeah, at one point, some students were protesting, so that was kind of weird. And yeah, I was never going to put any of this out there because I didn't think anyone would really be into it. But I started posting some clips of it, and a lot of people are curious about it. So hopefully some of you guys will watch this and enjoy it. Like I said, some parts are really funny, some parts are interesting, some parts are kind of slow, but it is what it is. And yeah, I guess that's it. Enjoy the show.
I'll be back in 10 minutes. Good evening, and welcome to Front Row, the first one of what is that I smell? Oh, I guess we're in Berkeley. Welcome to the first Front Row. Hopefully, the first of many to come. Of course, if all you guys behave. I guess it's also down to if I behave. You never know what can happen right here in progressive, left-leaning, liberal, free speech-minded Berkeley, right? So some of you may have heard about some ruffling of the feathers. So I'm going to start the show off actually a little bit differently than I had anticipated because this has just been brought to me. So I've been told that there may be a few people out here who want to come up on stage and share something with the audience tonight. So I figured since we have about 2 hours worth of great conversation up here about creativity and the Bay Area, if you're, instead of disrupting the show, which I've been told that you were going to do, I was going to say, why don't you come up here right now? I'll give you the stage for 5 minutes if you want. I'll even give you this mic, and you can talk to the audience. There'll be a little countdown timer right here. So when your 5 minutes is up, then you can leave the stage, go back to your seats or wherever you came from. And so, if anybody, I didn't mean that bad. If anybody, I didn't mean that bad. Okay. If anybody wants to come up here and share a few of your thoughts, you have a captive audience. I may have even been told that the doors have been locked from the outside. So, if anybody wants to disrupt, now's a great time. Anybody? Come on, we're in Berkeley. Come on, this whole institution is founded on free speech. They actually encourage it. Yeah. Why don't you come up? Come. Yeah, staircase is over there. Come. Oh.
The snare on St. Anger was also not your fault. I really like this.
Where to go home tonight? You know what? There is a vacancy in our PR department. Yes. And so please come and work with us. Well, if you, there's a couple people over there can take their name and number. And you don't want to sing? Oh, back at you. Okay. Okay. What? It's Black Lives Matter. Okay, gotcha. How about if we get back to our regularly scheduled program right now? You can get back to the audience over there. There you go. Okay, now, how about we start all over? See, we got all that out of the way now. We don't have to worry about it for the next 2 hours. Rob, you want to come out and start again? Okay, so, I've just hugged 10 people, 8 of them beautiful girls, 2 boys, and Rob. Hi, I'm Lars, your humble host for the evening. Welcome to Berkeley, welcome to Front Row. And since we're off to such a good start, I'm pretty sure that there will be lots of these to come. We can tackle snare drum sounds, we can tackle the lack of basement and justice. Maybe there's even some of you that we could talk about that Napster. We can go through all of it. We'll go through all of it. We'll book the next 5 years of Front Rows. They'll be great. Anyway, where were we? Personally, I can only speak for myself. James, I think we can fast forward that one. There you go. So, back to our regularly scheduled program, right? So, a couple of months ago, when they reached out, Kathy and Rob reached out to me and the student curators. They said if I would come in and playing the song Overkill. And I went over and I said hello to him, and we became instant friends, and he actually introduced me to all the kids over on Strawberry Hill over in San Francisco. That's right there. And so I became friends with a lot of the people up here in the Bay Area, Ron Quintana and Callan, and became sort of infatuated with the whole Bay Area scene. And it really made me want to go back down to LA and start a band. And so when I met James Hetfield, and a couple of years later when we got a chance to get Cliff in the band and move up here to the East Bay, we of course came up here in a nanosecond because Berkeley was where I'd spent so much awesome time in the previous few years before that, kind of honing my outlook on the whole world. So when I was given the chance to come here and be part of this thing at UC Berkeley, and to be here in this hall and be here with you, I of course said, fuck yeah. And so thank you for having me. And I want to say just a couple things about what's going to happen tonight. We've got 4 sections, 4 different groups of people that are come out and talk about creativity and what the Bay Area means to them. And I'm going to do my best Charlie Rose and ask some intelligent questions. It's sort of, when the students were pitching this to me, they used the word TED Talks. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. I'm sure you're sitting glued up at your computer watching that on YouTube, right? So sort of TED-style talks is kind of what this is based on. And for the Metallica Theo and his buddy, obviously being 2 of them, let's just get this just out of the way right now. You're not going to hear the new album. The 4 of us are not going to roll out on a riser behind that and start playing like Load and Reload in its entirety. None of that's going to happen. There's not a musical instrument anywhere in this building. They've all been cleared out, trust me. And so this is all about talking and gift of gab and, like Les Claypool calls it, interesting conversation. So that's what we're going to be doing up here. And there's a couple other things I just want to say. I was the one who suggested our esteemed panel guests tonight, so if you have any issues with the selection, you're going to have to blame me. I did notice, or actually my wife Jessica pointed out to me a couple of days ago, which I'm sure some of you have already spotted, that this may not be the most diverse group of people up here. Most of them are men. Actually, they're all men, okay? But hey, Bonnie Raitt wasn't available, okay? She's taping the Ellen DeGeneres show today.
Came up on stage, and to those students that are in a struggle with university. And that is that our being here should not be construed as taking one side or the other. You sprung an issue on us that we didn't know anything about. You gave us your interpretation, and as artists and creative people, we're used to looking at all sides before we make a decision. So there are a lot of people in the audience that made a commitment to come here, and it would have been disrespectful to them and their intentions for us just to go home. So I want people to know that.
Amen. I'll second that. Our second guest in the first group here.
That are grinding together. If you look at the East Coast, the Appalachians and the Alleghenies are the oldest mountains in this continent. They're stable, millions of years have gone by. San Francisco is brand new. And so from the ground up is the freshest, newest energy and soil and microbes and environment and the richest zones of like saltwater, freshwater, and tidal land. So it's actually starting from the planet coming up through us.
Wow. See, we'll leave here with more than you came with. So I think on that happy note, I mean, we could obviously keep talking for another couple hours, but my father's sitting down over there and probably is going to come out and body tackle us in the next few minutes if we don't get on with it. So would you guys please give it up for Jonathan? Please say hello to my father, Torben Ulrich. Do you want to? This is actually not my dad. This is Gandalf. What? So, he's 87 years old or young and going stronger than ever. He's holding me up right now.
Nice to be with you.
So, do you want to come sit over here?
Mark Berner's nice, Benioff's nice chairs here. You and I get the honor to sit in these.
There you go.
He brought them together. He'll come in a minute. As soon as we're out, we'll be out very quickly here. Time is short.
I'm sure at least most of the Metallica fans here know my father. And most of the Metallica fans here know what an amazing, what enormous role he's played in shaping my life, for better or worse, mostly the good parts. And so I grew up in a house full of awesome music, awesome art, awesome conversation, awesome bohemian ways of looking at the world back in Denmark in the 60s and 70s. And now we're here together in the Bay Area. And I asked my dad to come and be part of this. And you would like to share a few minutes of a movie. My dad and I did a movie together.
Yeah, way back about, let's say, 15 years ago.
15 years.
We talked about making something together since Lars had grown up, if you will, also following his old father, that was a little younger at the time, as a professional tennis player, and we traveled all over the place to Australia and to Berkeley and other places of renown.
On these pizza.
And so
I'm just going to go over there for 1 second.
Yeah.
Talk to your audience.
Okay, and so we thought maybe that since he knew a lot of the stuff that I was trying to work with, and what I was trying to work with also in continuation of what Peter said, what Jonathan said, and David, speaking of the creative process, if you will, which is sort of precious term maybe, or you could also say, if they, let's say Jonathan was a filmmaker, maybe I was trying to say, to try to be in this connection, a ball play, and maybe in that connection from that process, you could say a kind of a body maker, meaning that when you were a ball player, the skipping, the shipping of the rope to also make some imprints. So we call that imprints of practice, you know, when I put some rice paper and some ink. I think you see that in the next clip. Maybe Joe, if you have another clip there. Yeah, there you see that's ink and ink. And that's a skipping. And that was made in the church in Seattle, actually. We were up there at the time.
This ink is a bit more lively than the other ink.
So, take that with you in art class tomorrow.
Now Lars comes in, I think, and we can see pretty quickly.
I wanted to ask you a question or two. Question? Is that cool? Do you want to sit down?
Yeah, I mean, I can sit down here.
So I'm just curious about a couple things. I don't know if I've ever interviewed my dad. It's kind of cool.
Hello?
Wait till Hetfield gets out here. So I'm curious. Again, like we kind of talked about with our first three guests.
Yeah.
You know, you write, you
Try to, yeah.
You try to write,
Yeah.
you try to paint,
Yeah.
you try to make movies,
Exactly.
you do all these different things.
Yeah.
So I'm curious again, kind of like what we talked about,
Yeah,
you spent 40, 50 years in Denmark,
Yeah.
and then you came to America,
Yeah.
and so now you're living in Marin.
Yeah.
Since this is about the Bay Area,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
what is there a role, right now you're still fairly prolific, especially for 87.
Yeah.
What role does the Bay Area play in what you're doing right now? If any?
Well, I think it's a wonderful place, and as I think Lars told you early on, that we were here. I came to and played the tournament over in Berkeley, just down from the Claremont Hotel, there's a corner there where I came and played the tennis tournament, and I had this teacher that was a famous jazz musician, Sidney Bechet, and albeit sold out. So you just saw it a little bit like short.
Consider yourselves lucky.
Yeah.
So
Thanks for listening to all that.
hopefully the people who now see, this explains more and more, right?
Okay, you take me out. Okay.
I'll be back shortly.
Yeah.
We're almost halfway through. So my next guest, once again, it's a little bit of a departure from where we've been, and I guess I don't really need to set this up very much other than say it gives me great pleasure, and I'm very honored to be able to bring my friend, the CEO and the founder of Salesforce, out here. Please welcome.
We're in an unusual time, everyone agrees, right? And at the beginning of this, have we heard enough from this?
Yes! Take them out! Get the hell out of here! Get out of here!
So, yeah, I think in order for there to be a picket line, there has to be a strike. And that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But God bless Berkeley, and God bless freedom of speech. God bless everything that this great institution stands for, and everything that this institution is built on, like that, and like we were just talking about. The reason I was running around in People's Park in 1977 was because of, and so, hopefully, all the perpetrators here at the school who have been so pushy for us to come and do this are, and I mean that obviously in the absolute best way, are feeling good about what we're doing. Kathy's standing over there with her headset. How's it going so far? Good, okay. So maybe we'll get invited back. Maybe they'll go to their original first pick next time, who knows. But so we have segment 4, and now it's time to deal with a little bit of music. So please, I'll just bring our guest out here one at a time once again in alphabetical order. No order, a particular order of importance. So you know him as bass nectar in my phone. He's in there as Lauren, and he lives about 3.5 feet from here, literally like on the other side of that curtain, and is a local born and bred Bay Area. So this is. These are your people. This is your backyard. Hello, Berkeley.
Hello, Berkeley.
All right then. Secondly, born and bred just up the street in Richmond, part of the back in the '80s. We landed in El Cerrito. Kirk Hammett was in El Sobrani. Cliff Burton was down in Hayward. And this next guest I'm going to bring out held it up in Richmond. Now lives a little further north, but started in Richmond. And help me give it up for Les Claypool. And then, who's the last guy?
James!
Wow. It doesn't say anything other than his name. So I'm just gonna say, please welcome James Hetfield.
Yeah!
Let's find out.
Check it out. I get to interview James Hetfield. I've been waiting about 400 years for this. Not anything against the two of you, of course. Anyway, wow. Well, that's been quite an evening so far. You got anything to say?
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. I'm doing my best. This is what we used to call tap dancing. You're just kind of making it up as you go along. When I walk off every time, if you really want to know what's going on, I walk over there, have some notes, right? But I don't know if you've noticed, I never actually look at them. So, but the Bree...
We've noticed.
Yeah. Bree helped out a lot in the last couple of days about writing notes, so let's call him our safety net. When I was talking to you a couple of days ago, Les, we talked about what this whole thing was, and I, of course, stumbled my way through it, and we talked about that we're just going to have some conversation. So here we are on stage.
We're about to have a conversation.
We're about to have a conversation.
And you said, it's like a TED Talk, and I had no idea what that meant. And I told my manager, hey, Lars is doing this thing, it's kind of like a TED Talk, and he laughed at me because I did not know what that was.
And that was,
pointed me to the internet.
So where's TED?
To something besides Craigslist, where I spend most of my time. And I figured out what a TED Talk was, so.
Ted.
Hi, Ted. How's it going?
Hi, I'll be Ted for the next 30 minutes. We're talking about the Bay Area here. I mean, we got the East Bay represented pretty well here between Berkeley and Richmond and us landing in El Cerrito back in the day. We don't need to be super formal about this. Talk about whoever wants to run with it. You and I, James, came up here because of Cliff, and he was super insistent about basically, when we saw Cliff, for those of you who don't know, we saw Cliff Burton playing a band down in a band called Trauma, play down at the Whiskey in LA, and we started persuading him to join Metallica, and finally he said he would only join the band if we came to the Bay Area. Thank fuck. Excuse me. And we came up here 3 years ago. We were born and bred here. I mean, this is about the Bay Area. Somebody run with it.
Right, yeah. Well, as you know, what LA was like for us musically, we felt like misfits. We felt like someone who was playing music that wasn't about a look. It wasn't about a pose. It was It was from our heart. It was what we were feeling. And when we did come up and play up here, we connected with the fans because that's what they came to see or hear or feel. So the creativity was more of a connection up here than LA. So escaping LA, Cliff asking us to come up here was the
Cliff was a wise man.
Greatest gift ever.
Very wise man.
What about you, Les? I mean, Richmond, I mean, we were obviously sort of traveling in some of the same circles back in the day. Obviously, you know Kirk Hammett since
I've
way
known
back.
the hamster for many, many moons. You know, Richmond is kind of where I started. I was born in Richmond Hospital, which is, it's now a mental institution from what I understand. I don't know if I had anything to do with that. But my grandfather's, one of my grandfathers was a fireman, 3-engine, Captain Pierce. My other grandfather had a automotive shop, Simone Brothers, on 23rd. But then I ended up in El Sobrante, where I met Kirk, and subsequently ended up in Berkeley, where my mind started expanding, and I was experiencing wonderful things. I experienced wonderful things in this room. I saw Laurie Anderson here many years ago, saw Hunter S. Thompson speak as we're speaking, but he was far more inebriated than we are.
He was still more eloquent than we could ever strive to be.
No, there was a lot of mumbling going on. It was pretty sweet.
And you were born in the South Bay, right?
Yeah, I was born in the South Bay, and you know, my musical world basically began with Enter Sandman in 6th grade, and before that I was into art, and I didn't really listen to music other than what my parents were playing or what I'd hear on the radio, and Enter Sandman was the first song I learned on guitar, and yeah, I attribute a lot of my creativity in the Bay Area to the death metal scene. That, you know, a friend of mine, Matt, is in the audience somewhere from a band called Exhumed, and Exhumed and Spaz and a lot of other, you know, underground bands at the time really gave a voice to people who were looking for non-mainstream music. And I remember going to, you know, Exhumed's practice place, and I was...
Les, you have obviously over the years played with a lot of different bands. I mean, obviously primarily Primus, but lots of other offshoots and side bands and cool collaborations and solo things and so on. You know, I was thinking last night that the only band I've ever been in is Metallica, and you've done so much awesome stuff with such a great wide range of collaborators. What's when you sit and kind of look at the creative process and so on with different people, do you find that you have to sort of alter it as you approach different dynamics and different processes, or do you sort of, a little bit like Peter Coyote was talking about before, that it's all sort of the same and kind of disconnected, or do you find that you have to sort of, the different things that bring different results?
Well, I mean, for me, the whole notion of playing with different people is pretty much, you know, the creative process, whether it's music or drawing a picture or making a film, you know, it's all about the interaction. And for me, music is like a conversation. And if you're working with different people, you're going to have varied conversations. You know, it's not going to be the same conversation over and over. So if I'm doing something with, you know, like say someone like Bernie Worrell, who unfortunately is suffering from cancer right now. He's an amazing musician, but it's a much different approach than playing with someone like Adrian Ballou. But in essence, you just have a conversation, a musical conversation as yourself, and you reflect yourself, and you react to whatever they throw at you, and back and forth. And as far as the notion of doing all these things, you know, my wife and I just celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. She graduated from Calgary, and you know, I've always said that, you know, I'm faithful in my relationships, but I'm a creative whore. You know, I just love interacting with other people because you learn so much working with other people. whether they've done more than you or less than you, or you're helping them along or whatever. It's a great learning experience, and it's a great way to grow. You know, one of the scariest times of my life was when Primus was fizzling out at the end of the 90s. We were all disliking each other's company, and we went in different directions, and I hopped in a van with some of my favorite musicians, or an Airstream motorhome actually that I bought, and started driving it up and down the coast playing bars, and it was one of the funnest things I've ever done. And that period, that 10-year period, was one of the biggest growth periods for me as a musician and creative person.
It's awesome. James, you do a lot of other creative stuff. You do car stuff, which I know is a creative outlet for you. You do some awesome voiceovers, stuff like that. I know you interact a lot with your kids' creativity and so on. What do all these different things represent to you, and does, you know, the cars find its way to kind of infiltrate into like what you and I do with Metallica, and vice versa? Does something that comes from your voiceover experiences bring itself into the car? I mean, how does all that stuff web together, if in any way?
I like doing voiceovers. Yeah. Gosh, it's just another way to make something that I envision, or I think listening to all these people up here tonight has been really amazing, and how diverse the creative process can be, and how much you want to know about it or how much you don't want to know about it. I think that the more I think about the process, the more difficult it becomes. If I get into left, right, and all that stuff and start figuring things out, it becomes less creative to me. It's more like a formula or formulaic. And I would rather just shoot from the hip. I would rather just feel it instead of trying to think my way through it or to over-analyze it. So I like what you said about jamming with other people, where you're able to throw something out. I think I kind of work that way pretty well, like the way you and I work together. Throw an idea out, you take it and do something with it, which comes back, and it's like we want to make it better, and it goes back and forth, and all of a sudden it's some place there's no way I could have got it there myself. So working with other people is kind of key to me. Sometimes I'm not inspired to do a damn thing, and it takes someone else, but all it takes is a little spark, and then pretty soon it's a fire. So as far as the car things or drawing, doing logos, and when I was a kid, I was always drawn to imagery. Iconic imagery, or logos. There's that logo quiz. Man, I'm pretty good at it. Amazon, like, yeah, that's easy. There's something about that, being a very visual person, and knowing that I am, I can be okay with that. Not thinking that I have to be this way, I have to be creative this way. I think, before even coming out here, I felt, well, I'm not worthy to be on the stage after all those talks. And realizing that that's part of my creativity, that, just thinking that I don't belong is inspiring to me to be creative.
Lauren, and thank you again for stepping into this in 12 minutes notice. He really did. I texted him like last night or 2 nights ago, whenever you were just right there. You were, we haven't seen each other for a year or so, and when I saw you just as we were finished dinner, you were saying that you just mastering your new record. So tell us, since we're sitting here talking about process and talking about creativity, talk about your new record, talk about the process, talk about mastering your record today.
Mastering is really
walk our
boring.
friends through what that means.
But yeah, mastering is like a pretty uncreative part of the process, just because you're getting it to sound, a song to sound good on any system.
Master!
I like what you're saying about the collaboration though, because electronic music can be really isolated, and I kind of liked it after being in bands all through high school, getting into college where you could just sit there with a bunch of robots and
bass, do you write on guitar, do you write on keys, do you write a lot of your stuff sort of by yourself, or do you always have people that you prefer to collaborate with people, or what's your process like?
Well, it depends on what it is. You know, if it's a Primus project, it's you know, I might bring in some stuff, but it's the Primus guys putting it together. You know, when we did Oysterhead, it was definitely 3 cooks in the kitchen, you know, trying to make the soup their way and coming up with Oysterhead soup. And then when I do my own thing, a lot of times I'll just get on the drum kit and lay down a beat, or sometimes it's a vocal. I just finished this record. Me and Sean Lennon did a record up at my place, and that was an amazing collaboration because obviously he's a very strong voice as well as player. So it was one of the most equally collaborative efforts I've done as far as the recording. So it's always different. It's back to that whole conversation thing, you know. Some people are a little more forward with the way they present themselves, and some people lay back and interject every now and again. So
you're up in the, I believe it's the 707. Is that what?
I'm in the 707. Correct?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if you're in the 707,
not Vacaville.
So when we were talking a couple of weeks ago, you told me that that where you were there was no cell reception. And
no cell reception, which is...
I just like, how cool is that? I want to live where there's no cell reception. And so you're sort of, I guess for lack of a better term, somewhat off the grid.
You trying to call me a hillbilly, like sort of...
I want to be your neighbor. I want to live, you know, where you are. But no,
man.
But so,
it frustrates the hell out of the teenagers, but...
I can only imagine that. Separate conversation, but what role does that kind of, so going from Richmond and being obviously in the...
We gotta get off this Richmond thing. I spent more time in Berkeley than... Sorry.
The East Bay. The East Bay.
El Sobrante, the leftovers.
The hustle and the bustle of the East Bay to the quiet and the off-the-grid kind of vibes up in the 707. Do you like that tranquility up there? Do you come back down here to the bustling East Bay and right? I mean, what?
I'm bustling it up right now. You know, here we are in Berkeley. I could say the formative year. I spent my crazy years here in Berkeley. You know, this is where I lived in El Sobrante, and I got my heart broken by a girl who looked like Marie Osmond, and she started screwing everybody in town. So I came to Berkeley, and there's no.
She was more than a little bit country.
Berkeley was just this whole new eye-opening place, and we started going to shows every night, whether it was music or comedy or whatever. And once I found my mate and had made a little money, I ended up in the wine country just because we stumbled across this amazing piece of property. We've been there 21 years now, so is it better, is it worse? At times I miss it here, but I love it up there. It's an incredible place.
We will come up there.
Come on up.
Okay.
I got lots of vino.
James, obviously, I know a lot about your creative process once I'm fortunate enough to enter it. But obviously, we have a history, and we've talked, obviously, and shared with everybody that all of us, before we get to create Metallica music together, all 4 of us in each our own ways, sit and create in our own environment, in our own worlds. Before I'm fortunate enough to hear the awesome riff tapes and your ideas, and then, like you said, be able to take them maybe someplace else. What is that process like for you when you're kind of doing your own thing, either on the road or when you're at home?
Right. Well, for me, it comes from anywhere, really. A lot of times it comes from just being alone. I like having alone time, and just sitting there playing a guitar. It's almost soothing to me. Like I could put myself to sleep. Okay, I put others to sleep too. I could put myself to sleep playing guitar, and it's soothing. and it's also extremely violent and angry. So I think a lot of the creativity comes from, and like you said, it's a reaction to other stuff. The stuff that I hear on the radio, the stuff that's supposed to be good that's out there, the stuff that I'm supposed to like. I don't for some reason, and I'm not trying to be a rebel just to be a rebel, but when I hear that, I want to make something that I want to hear. So
almost like you're kind of evolving on it or remixing it to the way that you think it should
Exactly.
sound.
Same with the car. There's a car. It's a beautiful car, but if it only had this and this and this, it's like, so you make your own prototype, and that's kind of what happens musically. I like that song. I love that riff, but God, when he does that, you know, here, let's swallow that and digest it, and we vomit it out Metallica, you know? That is what happens. And that is really kind of why LA was such a great inspiration for us. It was filled with things that we hated. So it made us play harder, play faster, play more, and want to express ourselves. So that's why, you know, moving up here was so great to be able to have the anger side creating something, but also there was the positive side. You know, the batteries got two sources of energy, and we were using both sides when we came up here. So,
could I ask, have you guys changed your creative process pretty intensely from when you were first writing to where you're at now, or is it kind of a formula that's been that way?
It's morphed. We've tried other things, but at the end of the day, it's here's a riff, here's a song title, here's a really strong subject matter or something. And here's what I'm scared about. Here's what I fear. You know, things that
you do it alone, each of you, and then you show each other what you made. Do you ever write a song together, or is that?
Yeah, we've done that as well. We've done that as well, and it was called Saint Anchor. And
I don't think that much has changed. I mean, James is saying it's morphed, but it's still, you know, James will, you know, come up with some riffs. I'll come up with some drum beats, some ideas about different song structures, or how about something that it goes in this direction, and then he brings his riffs out, and I bring my kind of stuff, and Kurt gives a take, you know, sort of over the past 30 years or so, you know, Kurt or Newstead would bring in his ideas, and it was just basically, I think the one thing that we've been very fortunate is that we've all been egoless enough in that process to not sit there and go, that's mine, I own that, you know, I want that in there because it's mine. I mean, for some reason, we've been fortunate enough. There's been plenty of other ego shit in other places, but in the creative process, I think we've been able to kind of keep that at bay. And so there's never been about ownership or about mine versus yours. And so we kind of sit there and we, you know, like James is saying, it sort of starts. There's a riff, there's a drum beat, there's this, then there's a subject matter, and it's just about kind of piling it on. Like I often explain to people that are maybe not familiar, it's like sort of like building a house. You know, you start with the foundation is the riff and the rhythms, and then, or at least in our world, that, and then you sort of keep piling it on, and then the melodies and the lyrics have a tendency to come sort of later in the process. But if you look at 35 years of Metallica, it hasn't changed that much. I mean, there's been times, like James is saying, where we would go and let's try to reinvent the wheel and see, okay, and then St. Anger happens and somebody forgets to turn the snare drum on, like Theo said, and whatever else. And so it's, you know, all these types of things, and because, you know, I think over the course of our creative relationship, we've had, to a degree, a kind of an extreme fear of repetition. And we were always so like, okay, we've done that, now we gotta go over here, we've done that, now we gotta go over here, we gotta do something else. And it wasn't really until Rick Rubin showed up 8 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever and said, it's okay to be inspired by your past. You don't have to run away from it. You can also run into it or embrace it and kind of, you know, like the battle cry for Death Magnetic is kind of listen to the same stuff you listened to in the 80s. Kind of go back to the same process. Get off the computer. Get away from the Pro Tools and just get out in the room and interact together like people and stuff like that. So it's, we sort of keep evolving, but I think ultimately it's kind of the same. Just a newer 2016 version of it. I got asked a question. How cool is that? I'll shut up now. I like that. That's it. I didn't actually hear what you said, but I'm just going.
Dad's still here.
Wow. So, one thing we touch upon, I mean, you've just finished a record. We're finishing a record. And we're always making a record. What you guys are kind of, when we're all, what role does other sort of stuff have as we're deep in the thick of the creative process? I'm curious about that.
I listen to hair metal, and that makes me angry, so...
We're getting a lot out of this LA thing tonight.
No. It comes from anywhere. A line from a movie, listening to talk radio. It's kind of anywhere, really. Reading stuff. As far as lyricists go, I mean, there are some that I really admire and like to tap into, and
such as
just wish I could be as good as Tom Waits, as Phil Lynott, as Nick Cave, Leonard Cohen. A lot of great lyricists, and it's really cool to read up on them and hear how they come up with their stuff. And a lot of times what I discover is that it doesn't come quick. If it comes quick, that's okay, but it's okay that you hone your craft, because writing lyrics right now, it's like, starts off something really, really, primal, and then starting to add in more colorful words and jam in just more excitement and more emotion into the stuff. And when we're listening to stuff back, it doesn't sound like it's a lot of process, but when we go back and listen to the demos and then some of the lyric stuff that ends up on it, it's like, that's quite different. And it's really hard to not, and I'll speak for myself, being a lyricist, that when you're putting your heart on the paper, it's hard for other people to critique it. Like that movie earlier, how the older gentleman was just all cool with it all. It's really difficult to be like that. When someone's talking to you about your soul, your heart and soul that you're putting out there, and they say, yeah, it's all right. That's probably the worst. If someone says, I don't get it, I'd rather have them say that than, yeah, it's okay. That's totally awesome would work as well. All the time. But, I'm probably the biggest critic of myself, my growth, my work, anything that I do. I beat on myself harder than anybody else does. Whether I'm trying to preempt the beating, or I have a standard that I'd like to reach. Sometimes it takes a lot longer to reach it. And I want to be that artist that it just flows out of it and it's, the guy at the parties is just reciting lyrics and blah, blah, this and that. I'm not that guy. I sit down, I get dark, I get lonely, I get in my cave, and I start doing stuff. And that's not very collaborative, but it's maybe, it's really kind of thinking and feeling and just getting kind of inside myself and seeing what comes out.
What about you, Les? Who was, you talked about a Cohen and a Cave and so on. Are still a couple names on our way of people that sort of just help you through your creative process? These are people that you can go back to for inspiration.
Well, I mean, for me, especially as I'm getting older, I find the most spontaneous stuff, the most honest stuff is the stuff that sticks to me. They're the songs that I continue to play over the years. If I start thinking about it too much, it usually becomes a bit pretentious and contrived. And you know, I went through a period in the late 90s where I was kind of worried about what people thought, and you know, there were bands that were coming up that were obviously inspired by Primus, and they were doing better than those record companies going, you know, you gotta catch up with these guys. And I'm like, fuck, I did. and it was the worst creative period of my life, because I was writing all this dog shit, and it wasn't until all that went away and I started just writing for myself or writing for people who I respect. That's a big one for me. I have certain friends, certain people I know, when Tom Waits named my Purple Onion album as one of his top albums ever, I almost shit myself. That's an amazing fucking thing. I don't care what anybody else thinks about it, but he thought it was amazing. So that's a wonderful thing. Or I have my friend Adam, or I don't know, I lost track of what the hell I was talking about.
That's good. What about you, Lauren? I mean, we're a couple people. Let's all do something together.
No, I got him. I got you covered.
Do you want to just one last time do the skipping rope thing? So Vicky is somewhere in this building and was going to filter through a couple of Twitter questions. So at Rick in Bay 1, where you're at, Rick in Bay 1? Are you anywhere? You're over there. Hello. Asks, success seems to change the creative ability of many musicians to the worse. That's very profound, yeah. How do you try and stay down to earth, or do you? Who wants to run with that? It's an excellent question. Musicians? Any non-musicians?
Yeah.
Anybody?
You spelled you wrong.
You want to take
That's
it?
all I have to say.
You want to run with it?
Yeah, that's always a fear. You know, I think as a musician, at least, I fear that, God, you're gonna have a block. You're not gonna be able to do it. Or if I'm not starving, if I'm not drunk and in the gutter, if I'm not in crisis, my life isn't hell, I can't be creating great music, you know. People that are supposedly, you know, the creative ones, or the ones that are struggling the most, they're the youngest of souls and all of that. And sometimes I believe it, and sometimes I don't. Because I've got some wonderful things in my life that I wouldn't have if I was still that guy. Family, friends, health, things like that are inspiring to me.
Right. Anybody else want to answer that too?
Yeah. You know, when I came to Zen Center 42 years ago, I came out of 15 years in the counterculture, and I was having an interview with the Zen master one day, and I was kind of running off my credentials. I was always trying to live my life like I wanted to read it on a book jacket. You know, Peter Coyote was a welder, an artist, a farmer, and I was running off all of these things I had done that I thought were really cool. And he just sat there really calmly, and then he said, you know, the gutters are full of men that have had lots of experiences. You'll never find a man in the gutter that's had one experience to the depth of his being. And that sort of ended that train of thought that I did. So I'm seconding James.
Anybody else want to? David, Jonathan, Mark?
We can also have the next question.
Well, yeah, that's a... Put your son in his place, yes. No, but that's a great question. So I would be curious to hear all these wonderful people's take on that. But at Joe B. Horton Where's Joe B. Horton? No, he left? Okay. David Turner. Where are you? Oh, well, whatever. He's over there somewhere. All right. This is for David Turner. Do you ever find design in...
Yeah. When I'm not performing music. Performing music is really fun. Writing music is really fun. What other outlets? Yeah, I love I love being in my backyard. I'm a beekeeper. I raise bees. Just done this morning. Huh? What? No. Yeah. I like being outside. I like being outdoors. I like hiking, hunting, doing outdoor stuff. We just got a puppy. How many puppies is too many? That's all I want.
Woo! I'm going to cross off Columbia.
I'm sorry. We have one puppy. It's not too many.
Okay. Aiden Walker 86 asks, whoa, this is for me. Lars, what is your favorite art piece you own and why? P.S. Your dad is awesome.
Woo!
My favorite art piece is my dad.
I think you're his art piece. If you really think about it.
No.
It's Jenny B. What is that? Jenny B. O. on? I'm sorry. I'm doing my best here. Lauren, what advice do you have for balancing passion and career, parentheses, staying true to yourself while growing successfully?
Wow. That'd be hard to answer quickly.
Yourself, on your body. You limit your movement, you sit down, and it cuts your mind loose. When you think of a piano, it has 88 keys, it doesn't have 89. And when you look at what Bach and Mozart and Beethoven did, then you look at a synthesizer. Do you think that that unlimited lack of limits of a synthesizer has produced equal music? I don't. So I think that it's the accepting of limits that forces depth, and it's in that depth that you find freedom.
All right. Pearl XU asks for Jonathan, what inspired you to pursue a career in filmmaking as your form of art, and why?
Well, I was
at a certain time of day, or in a certain place, or is it totally random?
It's pretty random. You know, the shower is always an interesting place where things tend to come out.
Woo!
I always think about Perry Farrell's line of standing in the shower, thinking, pissing on himself. And it applies. I come up with stuff in the shower. Driving the car, I got my little recorder and I record weird little blurbs about sandwiches and flying dogs and puppies, of course. And I'm sure once I pass on, my children are going to find these really odd recordings of just bizarre retardation. It comes whenever. Sometimes it doesn't come at all. When it's that time, I go fishing, or you got to recharge the batteries. I'm a big proponent of don't force it. Let it come natural. That's always my favorite stuff. So.
Okay, thank you. So I'll say, one last question here. That's from my dad. It says, Mr. Torben Ulrich. Right? Mr.
That's too much.
That's too much already. Okay.
Because why is it too much? Wait. Charlie Parker was, a famous jazz musician, and someone mentioned Beethoven, and Charlie Parker interrupted him and said, Mr. Beethoven to you. And it's not, I mean,
Continue. Okay, so thank you for sharing that. How are your energy levels so high?
Yeah.
And what kind of breakfast do you eat? It's called
nothing on toast.
nothing on toast. Okay, so
It's because I don't do breakfast, you know.
And I knew that, but I was gonna.
No, but what I mean is I don't have breakfast. So.
So I had this morning I was looking through an art book, and I was reading something. So I just want to throw this last thing out there. So of course I can't read this. Hang on. Just fucking hang on.
It's us!
Okay, so I was reading this thing about a painting that I was looking at this morning, and there was an interview, or there was a quote here from the painter, who, we don't need to get into who he was, but so there's this quote here attached to this painting, and it says, "What can I say about my artistic intentions? When I start a painting to draw a beautiful tree and end up with a white cat, one expects me to control all this, but it's not possible. It's a never-ending struggle between my painting and me. It runs ahead. I never manage to conquer it. And finally, often it's the painting who conquers me." I thought that was very poetic and interesting, and I was wondering if any of you, in no particular order, would just say something about that.
Enter Sandman was about a dysfunctional family at first, then it turned into that. So yeah, I agree. If you're really accepting of the creative process, you let it go where it goes.
Mark?
I'm going to turn my time over to Torsten, actually.
Torben? Any comment on that? Time's up. Les? No, I was curious to see if everybody had a thought on that. Anybody just...
Yeah, because, you know, in Buddhist practice we talk about big mind or small mind. Small mind is the mind that talks to you, that you talk to yourself. It's that little room inside your head where you paste up all the photographs of who you think you are and who you've been told you are. And that's the one that tries to stay in control. When that one takes a rest, then the rest of the universe rushes in. And that's the part that's making your heart beat and making your lungs operate, and that's really running the show. And I think if artists have any kind of courage at all, or creative people, it's they have the courage to let that little self take a nap and throw themselves at the mercy of this big organizing energy of the universe.
And if maybe like Mark said also, and you said previously, then to let that big mind, I mean, this small mind listen to that big thing, you know, to listen is what I thought Mark also emphasized, you know. I mean, to listen, it doesn't mean only to listen to what you hear, but to listen to what comes in terms of the visual, if it's a painter, you know, or a musician, or whatever, to listen to what the heart tells you, you know. Sometimes in the old days, Baker Roshi said, you know, listen to Zen mind, you know, listen. And so, I think, you follow what I mean? A little bit like the listening, and that can be both in terms of seeing or feeling, like you said, the feel, not analyzing, but where it comes from, and let it come into you a little bit like we've been talking about here tonight. Let that small mind maybe vanish, maybe with some sitting practice and all that, and then, you know, listen, okay, listen, then, okay, am I hearing something there? And maybe not. So if you don't hear, then you wait, and you have to wait maybe for some time until, but something most of the time will come, you know.
Thank you for that. I think that on that happy note, we probably want to call it before we have to hand out sleeping bags. I have one request. Can I have a request? So before we go, I'd really like if we get a picture all of us together. Is that cool? Can somebody, is there a photographer? Oh, there you go. Can we just do a picture of all of us on the stage, this awesome group of creative people? Yeah. I just said goodbye yet.
Do this.
Thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. Thank you to Kathy, thank you to Rob, thank you to Rob, thank you to all the students who put this together. Come on, Eric. Come on, Eric. This is all you. Come on, Eric. You guys are the reason we're here. Come on, Eric. These are your fellow students. Rob, Kathy, come on. Come on. There you go. So on behalf of this awesome group, thank you. And you know, if these guys want another one, and you want another one, maybe there'll be a front row too one day. Over and out. Thank you,